Alex, and you're watching the Evercade Alpha.
The future of Evercade is SNK. How you doing, everybody? This is Ed from the Evercade Effect, and I thought I would make a video, kind of talk about Evercade, with being Neo Geo being the future, and why I believe that. And I also want to talk about this email that Andrew's sent out. Which, by the way, like, Andrew is the CEO from Blaze Entertainment, so I wanted to go through that and kind of talk about the year in review of Evercade, what to expect in 2025, and how it all ties together and all that. So let me go ahead and share my screen and let's get started. So we're going to take a look at this email. For those of you who are like, if you sign up like through Fun Stock, you get access to this email and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and go through this, and it says, "Dear Evercade community, it's another year done, and what an incredible year it's been. We've achieved amazing things together in 2024, and I wanted to personally thank you all for your amazing support and enthusiasm for our products. This year has been nothing short of extraordinary for Blaze Entertainment, and it's thanks to you that we have been able to continue building on this fantastic platform we've created over the last 4 years." And now they go ahead and they go over some highlights. 2024 has been a year of innovation and growth, unforgettable gaming moments, some that stand out. And I'm not going to read like every single thing in detail, but just the highlights. We have the Evercade Alpha, the launch of their updated hardware, VSR, EXPR, and then they say legendary. Well, depending on again, each their own titles. Tomb Raider, Legacy of Kain. Although I think that was a good get. And then expanding, beloved Toplin, and we'll get back to that. And then they're talking about partnering with Atari and ArcWorks, to bring you the brilliance of Atari and Technos in our Super Pockets. And then, of course, they are thrilled to announce their partnership for SNK, exciting collaboration of 2025. And they can't reveal much yet, but they want us to they want us to kind of just stay tuned. So let's go ahead and let's break this down. So first, I do want to talk about the Evercade Alphas, right? How do we feel about that? Regardless of what I say, if you ordered one and you're playing the thing right now and you enjoy it, that's awesome, and that's all that matters, right? So let's go ahead and let's talk about specifically here, the bar tops and whatnot. And do we think it was a success? Were there some missteps along the way? Are there things that Blaze could have done better? So let's first, we'll go over the positives and the negatives personally of what I think with Evercade Alpha. The positives, they've reached, they've branched out yet again, more so to the arcade community. They did that a little bit with the Super Pockets, with the Capcom, and with the Taito. But now that it's really gotten the attention of some of your, arcade community YouTubers, who've gotten them, interviewed them and whatnot. So I see that as a positive. Also for people who are, in our community, who are kind of looking to experience arcade and kind of, more of a budget, and maybe they don't have room for a big cabinet, which I think, as a positive, that would have been too much of an investment for Blaze. I think if they made, full arcade one-up arcade cabinets, well, it would have been really nice. I don't think they would have sold as well, because it would have been a lot more expensive, and we'll talk about that. I don't think right now there's a market for people to pay $600+ for full scale Evercade cabinet, except for maybe Pete. No, but seriously, I mean, it would be a cool thing, but with all the different options out there, I don't see that being a viable one. So yes, I think it's a great thing. It's reached out to the community. It's something different. They've continued to extend the Capcom license. So those are some of the pros. Some of the cons with that, kind of the biggest elephant in the room, and kind of the biggest number one problem with Evercade, is that when we have games that are trapped, behind these devices. And what I mean by that, we didn't get any Capcom carts. To this day, we have not gotten Capcom carts, which is a shame. So for me, that lessens the excitement. I will repeat this until I die. Evercade is all about physical media and experiencing physical media and being able to collect a cool thing, put it on your shelf, have the clamshell case, have the booklet. And really, when something is just, built in, it takes away from that excitement. It's kind of the opposite direction of Evercade. Blaze seems to think that that they did need to. When I talked to Sean, they did need to put Evercade Alpha on this to sell more, and maybe that could be true. I mean, sorry, put Capcom's branding on the Alpha to sell more. Well, that might be true. I think at some point though that it's maybe I don't know. I think this Blaze just needs to maybe have more confidence in their brand and understand the market that they're catering to cares about physical media. And so kind of a con for me was the fact that yes, they did not we did not get the carts, right? And kind of for the and for the price point. I guess it's one of those things that if you do, you're looking for that, you're going to pay a premium. I think people are aware of that. There have been some quality control issues that I've seen on Reddit and with carts, and we'll kind of get to that. We'll get to that later in the email, but just kind of keep that thought. However, I think the problem could have been solved, and again, this is just my opinion. I think maybe Alpha might have needed a little bit more time for development. I think it should have come out at the beginning of the year. Maybe they had to, maybe they had to push it because of this partnership. Holy crap! But I think that if they had released it and they just kind of made it more of like a generic cabinet, had marquees, and bundled it like with the Data East and the Toblin collection, and you could get those cards separately and not have had any built-in games because Capcom is being dookie, won't let them have carts. I think that and again, maybe it wouldn't have appealed. I think that would have pleased our external audience. People just looking in the store for something extra just to kind of buy it off the shelf. I think people in the arcade space, maybe they wouldn't have been wowed as much because it didn't have Street Fighter Alpha on it. I do think the Capcom collection kind of is in a weird place. I think people like it, but I don't think the hype is there as much as Street Fighter, even though Street Fighter doesn't have as many games. So it's kind of a weird thing. But I do think that if they just had kind of done that or pursued more arcade or maybe waited for the partnership with SNK and come out with, the Neo Geo MVS, that may have been different. And we'll kind of get to that, here in a moment. But so that's, and really for me, the other, again, for me personally, the other con just kind of was that it was a lot of money for me that didn't offer anything new in the Evercade ecosystem. And what I specifically mean is I can still play my games. For me, if I wanted the arcade experience, I would have picked up an arcade stick. And that's pretty much, it. But then again, for those who have enjoy, same with the Super Pockets, kind of fall into that same thing. Yes, well, they have like Techno Super Pockets. Yes, they have Atari Super Pockets. The big issue with that is that notice these are for legacy cards, right? So yes, maybe Blaze has reignited that partnership, or that or reignited some of those licenses. Maybe partnership is too strong of a word with Atari, with Technos, but we don't have the cards. So for me, it's kind of like whoopie-doo. When you get one Super Pocket, you only really need to own one, in my opinion, unless you really just want those games. I own the Taito one, but I did a full breakdown on the video on all the controls and everything. For me, like the Super Pockets themselves just don't feel premium like the OG Evercade, like the EXP Evercade, and the buttons and all that. Just for me, just aren't as good. I mean, it's a $60 price point, but especially when you have the Tate mode grip with the EXP, you can't. The Super Pocket doesn't come close. So that's kind of where I feel that we're at. I do suspect, since we are on the topic of alphas and Super Pockets here, we are going to see an Evercade Alpha MVS. Or they might just call that. I mean, Blaze would be dumb not to. I mean, obviously they're going to do that. Neo Geo puts our arcade games. The Neo Geo machines always had cartridges. Evercade has cartridges. It's a perfect fit. I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see Super Pockets, and maybe the Super Pockets will maybe lean more towards having the Neo Geo Pocket, console games on there. But I also think we're going to need physical cards. I think we're going to also see all those things. I know there's like a lot of naysayers out there, who don't seem to believe. But yeah, I think we're going to get all that. Because remember, SNK is not Capcom. So let's go ahead and let's move on and take a look at this. Then they say, well, they've had their triumphs. They've had many challenges. The community is growing. I'm just kind of paraphrasing this. One thing I do like here is that logistics have remained a significant challenge with global stability and rising costs influencing our ability to deliver goods in regions as planned. This is something we are working on to address as we move ahead. Like many things behind the scenes, are kind of a challenge to deal with on a daily basis, and it's a testament to the incredible team we have here at Blaze, one of your partnerships, blah, 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 blah. So at least, okay, while they are patting themselves on the back, at least they do acknowledge there are challenges with the shipping and the costs, and I do appreciate that. I do appreciate that they're acknowledging um, they are acknowledging this, because sometimes in the past I kind of feel like they would put the blame on the shippers, or they would just say, "Oh, it's the fault of logistics." But here they're taking ownership, which I think is important, right? And so now we kind of get more towards the end of the email here. So they said, looking ahead to 2025. Okay, so this is kind of going back to SNK. They said, we've already seen a tease on what to expect next year from Blaze Entertainment with our upcoming SNK collaborations. We are already the only retro gaming company producing officially licensed bespoke cartridges with the biggest library of physical games available anywhere in retro gaming. 100% true. That is definitely awesome. That's also the 5th anniversary of the release of the original Evercade handheld, so I don't say this lightly. 2025 is going to be even bigger. Ooh! Whether you're a fan of Evercade or Hyper Megatech, or our focus is providing you with even more amazing product surprises and memories to treasure on behalf of the Evercade team, Blaze Entertainment, blah blah blah. Your fashion, your feedback, and everything else. Interesting they say have an amazing Christmas season, have an amazing holiday season. Sorry, don't know why that's a little pet peeve of mine, but it's all good. And then yes, there's the CEO, Andrew. So yeah, that's kind of a taste of things. And yeah, I would sure as hell hope that next year would be better, right? Next year would be a lot better. We definitely have a lot to look forward to. I've been saying this for the longest time, for the last 4 years. The future Evercade is SNK. I've been saying that, not that phrase exactly, but that's that is their quote. But I've been saying that, like, it needs to move in the direction of Neo Geo. And you may be asking yourself, well, why is this so important? Okay, so while the Nintendo Switch does technically have physical media, they don't have physical media in the shape of a cartridge. You don't hear that sound when you put it in. You don't have that same feel and touch, right? Yes, it's physical media in the same way that, like, let's say like a CD is physical media. You put in the disc system, you play the game. But for some of us, just some of us, like myself, there's something special about having a cart. And Neo Geo is one of those systems that a lot of us wanted growing up. We heard the legendary rumors. We saw them like in the back of like Electronic Game and Monthly magazines. It's like, ooh, we always heard about that one friend that supposedly had a Neo Geo, and we wanted it. Like many of you playing that in the arcade, I can remember one of my friend's brothers who was, kind of a gaming snob, or we call him a gatekeeper now. I remember when he had like one of those Neo Geo memory cards. Didn't have the system, of course, but he could brag about, hey, you can bring this through the arcades and check this out. It's kind of cool, and that was really neat. I have fond memories myself of playing Neo Geo games like Fatal Fury, King of the Fighters, Magician Lord, all those like in the arcade themselves. And then oddly enough, like in the early 90s, I can remember like emulators like Neo Rage X and this other, I can't remember the name of it. If you know, put in the comments below. It was such an early Neo Geo emulator that you had to like you had to click on a batch file that would only support certain games, and you couldn't use any keypads for like the early versions. You could only use a keyboard. I remember playing that on my laptop in college, and it was pretty sweet. So yeah, I've got those memories of nostalgia. I even have those memories of playing the bad port of like Fatal Fury on Super Nintendo, where the second player for some reason in versus mode could be all the bosses. And I didn't discover the Neo Geo Pocket until later on as an adult. And of course, SNK has many other games that aren't like on the Neo Geo that we might see. I mean, those like 40th year collections are out now. I could see us getting some of those red cards. So the reason Neo Geo is so important is I kind of feel like it's the white whale, the Moby Dick of Evercade collecting. I'm sorry, it will be the Moby Dick of Evercade collecting, of retro game collecting. See, my brain is going ahead there. And what I mean by that is it's one of those systems where growing up, and even now, it's super expensive. With one of the physical carts, most of us will never get to own a Neo Geo, or if we do, it's not going to be like the vast collection of games unless we like win the lottery, right? But yes, it's emulation, but still, you can own a physical cart, and you can own an instruction booklet, and have it collectively be back there, and have the experience of putting in the cart, and being able to play Neo Geo at home, and that would be awesome. And that is gonna resonate. And with the retro community, I think that'll even get more attention, right? Just like this year, I did see like a lot of posts on Reddit and whatnot and comments, and people say like the reason why they bought an Evercade was for Legacy of Kain. You know what? Like I didn't realize that that was more popular than even Tomb Raider, right? Which Tomb Raider is popular, but I was just amazed how there really was um, a very vivid community behind Legacy of Kain. And then being honest, I only really got involved in Legacy of Kain when it came out for Dreamcast, right? It was just kind of like, oh, this is a cool game, but I didn't realize there was much of a following. You know, me growing up, being my friends, I was unfortunately similar into Tomb Raider more. But I digress. And so my point is, if people are getting into Evercade because of like Tomb Raider and Legacy of Kain, and also like I've seen posts like last year for Duke Nukem, think of SNK, right? That I will say in the retro world is catnip. I don't know about you all. I see like a Neo Geo thumbnail. Maybe the reason you clicked on this thumbnail. I see Neo Geo in the title. I see something about SNK. I click on it. I love hearing about the Neo Geo. I love hearing the Neo Geo being discussed and anything having to do with it. It's just there's just so many good memories, and it's just such an incredible system at its time. I mean, maybe some people now may not realize it, but it's like having the arcade at home. That's what it was. That's one of the things that really turned me on to the Sega Dreamcast. It was kind of like a Neo Geo too. All these awesome 2D and 3D games that you could play like perfectly, and you could have it at home. That we're in the we're out there in the arcades, and I think the reason I bring up arcades, I think that's where I really think we're going to see Blaze go in 2025. I mean, otherwise they would be dumb to release, the Evercade Alpha, an arcade, system, and not take advantage and strike while the iron is hot, and just go for it and kind of put everything out there. That's what I think we need to see next year. I know there's a big following for the blue carts and computer carts, and I really appreciate that. But honestly, I feel like that's a niche within a niche for retro gaming. And I understand that over like in the UK and Europe, that was bigger than here in the United States, and I respect that. However, arcade is universal. That's loved everywhere. That is like the one common like gaming. I don't even want to say console, but gaming experience worldwide that we all share. That's not as niche as you think. And if I go back in time, around like 4 or so years ago, I swear when like the OG first came out, there was talk of right now they're only like the Nintendo versions of like Pac-Man and all that, but we are going to get the arcade ports at some point. We're going to get the arcade ports. Well, arcade is here, and I really got the impression that Evercade was going to evolve and mainly focus on arcade, and that's what makes sense. It's always a great experience, whether you want to challenge and you want to try to like 1cc that shooter, or you just want to go through a beat 'em up, right? You just want to play through the experience and have unlimited credits, really for any of those games, right? And it resonates with everybody. Unless you're like a freaking alien living on Mars, I haven't heard anyone into retro gaming say, I hate arcade, I'm not into arcade. You might have more of a passion for another system or another console, but I think as gamers, and especially retro gamers, we all really can just like, arcade is something that we can just all resonate and understand and have those experiences. So I really predicted 2025 that Blaze is going to go nuts with the license. We're going to see reskins of the EXP. We're going to see reskins of the VS. And I mean, why not? It doesn't involve any R&D. They just, slap some artwork on there. They've already got the hardware, right? We're going to see that for the Evercade Alphas. I think half of the carts, I think at least, I will predict and say 4 to 6 carts, definitely, actually, no, 6 carts next year will be SNK carts. I think at least half of those are going to be arcade carts, and then the other half will probably be like the blue carts that'll be ports of SNK games. Just kidding. No, they're not gonna do that. I just had to say that because Genejoke has been teasing the hell out of me for that. But no, seriously, I think we're gonna see like 2 red carts, which would be like the console ports of games, kind of like your Nintendo ports. And I think we're gonna see at least 4 or possibly more of the purple. Or maybe they'll go out and branch out and make Neo Geo a separate line of carts, and they'll make them like your black and gold carts, which would be truly epic. We will have to see. And so that's why, like the title says, like the future is it. Future of Evercade is SNK. This license is going to reignite passion. It's going to grab a lot of attention. I mean, I'm even still hyped about it now. And for something like Evercade, I keep saying it's a living platform that you got to keep the hype there, right? Because we have so many options and so many ways to play games now, either like using like modern retro FPGA devices with original carts, whether it's emulation, or just like, using like an Ambernic device. We have so many options. Evercade needs to keep it special. And even though the first half of this year, for me at least, was kind of like lackluster, the second half did make up for it. Why? We got the Toplin carts. We got the arcade carts. And even though I'm very excited about getting that dual indie cart, I hate to admit that like I've been enjoying the arcade carts more. Yeah, I'll be getting Toplin 4 replaced. I did have that cart die on me that will be saved for another video. But Video Games Plus, they responded back to me and they'll send me out another one. Which kind of leads me to the last things, quality control. I think that is one of the last things I want to talk about. I think Blaze needs to refocus and go back to that. And maybe it's just me because I've had like five or six carts now, fail. I've all gotten them replaced. They've all under the warranties, but it's more of just an inconvenience. It's more of a disappointment, right? Especially since my channel is dedicated to Evercade. It's a shame that I do have a cart die on me that, I'm not able to play it. I have to wait. And then with logistics being more challenging, especially around like Christmas time and all that. Toplin 4 is one of the more popular carts. I probably won't get the replacement to the end of January, which is kind of a bummer, man. But so that's kind of what I mean. And then I've seen various Reddit posts about different quality control issues with the Alpha. Some people talking about it freezing up, like not being able to hot swap carts, things with it coming damaged, and just like like looking at that, like the screw covers and stuff like that. Arcade 1-Up suffers from the same thing. That it's still, for me, just looks too much like a toy. I'm not going to digress on that. I kind of talked about that. And maybe those aren't as much quality control. But maybe those are more like cosmetic preferences. But to me, though, when you order and get a cart, you should be able to play it. It shouldn't fail. There shouldn't be any issues. If it's something where Blaze has to redesign their architecture, kind of meaning that the carts are read-only or they're on a Linux file system instead of a FAT file system, and then you have your file saved separate, and then we have more of like the updates in the firmware, which they've kind of gone back and forth, but I think they've gone more towards that, where all the updates for the carts are in the firmware. Everything else should be read-only. And I don't know. I think the reason why they're not read-only is because when you have to like reflash or update a cart. But in these cases where we do have a failed cart, it's not like we can just plug in that cart, connect to the internet on our VSs or EXPs, and just have that cart reflashed, right? We still have to get a replacement. So that's my hope in 2025, that we're not going to see like we will see new hardware, but you won't have to get it, right? If you already have your like 3 or 4 ways to play Evercade carts, you won't have to worry about getting another way to play it. I think they're going to buckle down, focus on quality control. This is going to be huge. This is going to be exciting. And I mean, I'll even say like I can play any of those like ROMs right now if I wanted to on my Steam Deck, but it's not the same thing. I want the physical carts. I want that experience of physical media, right? Like I'm just like super, super hyped up for Neo Geo. And I've said this before. This may come to bite me in the ass, but I don't see us not getting carts. That would be not only 100% against more so the Evercade model, but even more so because Neo Geo was all about having physical cartridges. So, but I think we're going to get it all. I think if anything, the people who are going to be upset is because they don't want to have to spend all the money like on a Evercade Alpha MVS or Super Pocket. And guess what? You don't have to. Even if they do an awesome like reskin of like a Neo Geo XP, you don't have to buy it. So that's why it doesn't bother me. It would kind of be more if they just came out like with an EXP2 or VS2 and a new type of cartridge format, and you had to buy that to play your cards. Then that would be a bummer, right? But yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts. Well, I believe the future of Evercade is SNK. It is going to be a really big partner. I know I said this. Okay, the final last thing I'll leave you with this, because it has been talked about recently, is with Sega and My Arcades. I don't see, because they've announced it, so pretty much Sega has made it clear that they'd kind of rather release these these little like cheaper arcade machines, throw on a few games on there, and give you that experience, whether they're console games or not, instead of doing something special like releasing carts. Now, some of you may say, "Oh, well, if they're willing to license it to My Arcade, maybe we will get it. Maybe we will." But don't forget, unfortunately, Sega is the one company where they just make bad decisions. they just make bad decisions, which will ultimately their downfall. I would encourage anyone, if you haven't yet, watch Game Changers. It's a documentary on HBO Max, and they kind of talk about that. And you'll be reminded that with Nintendo, here in the United States, they knew how to package and everything and gear it towards like an American audience and a European audience. Like, they knew that, and they changed the whole branding and everything. When there was a Sega and USA specifically, and Sega USA had control, they did fine. The problem was Sega in Japan has just been out of touch. with a, kind of with what the rest of the world, what they should do with the rest of the world, right? They kind of have their ideas. I mean, hell, there was a Guardian article that came out where Sega's like, I'm not a retro company, which is a damn shame, right? So yeah, for all the things I say about Nintendo, they very well knew, they very well knew how to like cater to their audiences around the world and not making stupid, decisions that would like bankrupt the company or anything else. That doesn't still excuse Nintendo from not having a virtual console or more mini consoles. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited to get SNK. The only other thing to be the icing on the cake is getting Konami and TurboGrafx, or maybe getting the elusive 2600 Activision collection. We'll see. But yeah, I just thought this would kind of be a fun video to do. Let me know in the comments, what you think. I think you heard. Are you really excited about Evercade in 2025? And then I do ask, if you just kind of stumbled in here through the YouTube algorithm and you like what you see, please consider subscribing, because I've been, I go live a few times a week. We do a podcast, Evercast, every week. And yeah, I stream a lot of Evercade indie games. And I recently also got the Chromatic by Mod Retro Game Boy. And I've been streaming that a little bit, and I plan to do more videos. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. If you want to support the channel more, you can become a channel member. And I am going to go ahead and thank them now in this video. Thank you so much, everyone, and bye-bye. Thanks, Crash Line, Mr. Shua, Immortal Sojourn, Sucker MC, Ember Cummings, Joe Whitlash.